Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be my next Legacy of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one will be for chapter 20, which is called Anonymity. Not unanimity, anonymity. So yeah, we get the sort of celebration here in the aftermath of the mission. Both sides of the mission have gone well, and it seems like, oh, everyone's getting on a lot better, but then kind of two things happen. One is like the reality of the situation for like Yangchen and Kavik comes back into play of like he has to give his next report to the Order of the White Lotus, and suddenly the whole, oh yeah, our kind of like reunion as teammates here, what's actually happening here comes back up, and that gets in the way of like, it almost reverses a lot of what's already been done. But then the kind of twist in this chapter, the kind of turning point here, when they get back to the safe house, Kalyan is there and he wants to talk to Yangchen. So big chapter here, both from the kind of relationship point of view, but then also bringing this other dynamic that we've been waiting for a while, like effectively the debut of Kalyan in this book. So important stuff here. So yeah, let's jump in here. So we start off with, yeah, sort of like they act solemnly as they leave, but then immediately it turns into pretty big celebration here. They kind of race each other home. We see that Yangchen is delighted to have her glider back. She does some kind of like tricks on the way back, including some stuff where she just spins the glider and sort of like leaps up really, really high. So she gets like way ahead of Kavik. Eventually he kind of catches up. And yeah, it's interesting, you know, like she grabs him into like a headlock and it's just like, we did it. No, wait, you did it. I can't believe you pulled it off. Kavik lifted her into the air, kind of spins her around. So it's this really kind of happy celebration. The rest of the team at this point comes back in and they're kind of like, yeah, you should probably grip him lower under the chin or he won't pass out. Like just them kind of joking at like the kind of quote unquote blossoming relationship that those two have. So Taigum and Akudan kind of walk in. Jujinta's here as well. The mission did go smoothly. They note that theirs was obviously a tense mission in a different way, in that it was more of a like infiltration stealth. They had to stay undercover. They had to plan, you know, obviously lighting the ship on fire and making it look like an accident. Whereas they feel the mission that Kavik and Yangchen went on was just them playing a game. But of course, we know there was a lot of acting involved. They really had to play things perfectly to make it work. But the mission was a success. So Jujinta is also here, and he's like, yeah, no one followed us here. We are safe. And he of course isn't used to maybe being the most kind of jovial character, but this is a kind of fun celebration. And he's just like, did everyone have fun? Was that a requirement I missed? And so she just kind of grabs his hand. I think she's still holding on to like Kavik's hand, and it's just like, hey, come on, you have fun too. And this is where we bring up the kind of like issues between Kavik and Jujinta of like, in a way, Jujinta can't have fun because Kavik is here and everyone's being a little bit more comfortable around Kavik. She tries to point out that like, hey, we're a team and we've got to, you know, work really well as a team, you know, put aside our differences to work together because just quit complaining and work together. I shouldn't have to play babysitter on top of everything else. And so Kavik is just like, words for the ages, truly. And so, you know, they're still at odds with each other. You know, there's some fighting going on, but it's getting better, you can sort of tell. So those two are trying to sort of fight each other as Yangchen kind of holds them apart. And she's just like thinking to herself, like, may my successors keep less ridiculous company. And, you know, you be the judge of that. Yangchen's team versus avatars that come after her. But definitely kind of a fun scene overall. We then get the cut to like the next stage, and, you know, it's Yangchen and Kavik walking back to the safe house to where they're kind of staying. Again, he's meant to be Master Liu. They're kind of staying together. She's like, you need to get along with Jujinta. And he's like, I used to. But also, what do you care? I'm not part of the team. Did you forget I have to report all of this back to the White Lotus? So this is like bringing the whole thing back down to earth. And like, in a way, Yangchen is a little bit like, ooh, why did you bring that up again all of a sudden? Like, what's going on here? I thought we were getting back to kind of normal. But she realizes, like, in between there had been a genuine gap where Kavik was her companion only and not the agent of another party trying to take advantage of the Avatar. So almost like forgetting the actual reality of the situation here. She's like, you were the decoy and you performed your duty. Tell Mama I give you full marks. You're real senior Lotus material. And again, they kind of continue to snipe at each other, a big contrast to what was happening in like the previous scene. Glad to be of service. I'm always available when one of your plans nearly ruins an entire city. So this is when like she, heads back in first, kind of ahead of him. And she's just like, wait, I think we need to talk about this. Actually, we shouldn't argue like this. We're not children. Stop sulking. Come inside and we'll talk about this. But who responds is a different voice. And as she turns around and Kavik finally gets back into the room, it is revealed that sitting there in the chair, completely indifferent to all of this, is Kalyan. He has infiltrated their room and has been waiting here to talk to Yangchen. And of course, we get the whole dynamics here where Kavik walks in, doesn't shut the door, and he's just like, hey, you forgot to close the door. And all these little things of just him constantly putting Kavik down, like, I'm better than you. It's her first time, of course, meeting Kalyan, and so she's kind of seeing the kind of relationship dynamic, but also seeing so many of the similarities of like, this person is exactly who Kavik models himself off. Kavik as like an errand runner and some of the skills that he has, it is so clear he tries to emulate you. But then she sees their kind of interaction and it's like, it's a weird interaction ultimately, because Kalyan obviously is doing quite a lot to protect Kavik, but the way he overall treats him is pretty bad. It's absolutely, Kalyan the great, Kavik the lesser, that type of thing. So any opportunity to put him down, and we saw this of course in the big scene with Kalyan in the previous book as well. It was constantly like, look at what I've done to save you. I want you to do one thing to basically save me. You are nothing, basically. But yeah, he's just super cool in this situation. Oh, like, finally get to meet the Avatar. What's the proper procedure here? Do I bow, grovel, ask for a blessing? But she's kind of prepared to fight. He's like, I'm not here to fight. I want to talk and kind of, in a way, try and keep the peace here. And he's just like to Kavik of just like, I want to talk to Yangchen. Stay if you want, again, dismissing Kavik, that he's not like a important part here. It's just like, no, let the important people talk and you can listen in if you want. So lots of little subtle kind of downplaying of Kavik here. She does ask him, does Chaisi know that you're here? And he says, no. And she doesn't know who Kavik is, so you can both rest easy on that front. I'm not a monster who would betray his own blood. So they continue to stick to this idea. Like, he has actually done things that have helped his family. When he left and gave them the house, that was exactly it. He has saved his brother numerous times. But it's becoming more and more clear that the Kavik-Kalyan relationship for a very long time has very much been Kavik constantly in the shadow of his brother, and his brother very much like embracing that idea of like, you will stay in your place and that is below and under me. So you could see Yangchen realizing that like, this is the issue there, and in a way, this is kind of why Kavik won't go against his brother to a certain extent, and it's a frustration ultimately. And what we see here is that Yangchen is going to be put into a situation where she also can't really go against Kalyan either. So, this is a courtesy call between two professionals in the same trade. So he basically praises her for like, oh, you basically bankrupted Iwashi and through his favorite game. I like how that worked. There's a bit of the inner dialogue here about like, okay, you mentioned the fact that he knows that we won big at the game table, but does he know that that was just like a decoy for the mission with his ship? It's unclear, but she assumes that he probably knows that and is playing it super cool by not revealing he knows everything, which is part of playing the game correctly, of course. But he does warn her here. However, I want to warn you, antics like that won't work on Chai-Si. You need to back off her trail before someone gets hurt. She counters with, like in Bin-Er, like Honshu was, and he's like, exactly. Honshu, may he rest with the kindest spirits, created the mess, that mess because he stuck his nose where it didn't belong. There are plenty of fights you can pick as the Avatar. Let Chai-Si win and stick to marks like Iwashi and the Bin-Er Shangs. The adults can handle running the world. So we've seen this kind of theme come up a few times now. Various organization groups, people, effectively telling Yangchen, you stop playing the game, let the best people here actually play the game and win the game. This is exactly the way the White Lotus consider the situation on Yangchen. And now here's basically Kalyan being like, Chai-Si owns the game. And so it's just everyone thinking that they are the best person possible to be in control, as expected. She does note that Kalyan gave more compliments than Ayunarak, flew a different banner, but ultimately his tack was the same. Everyone wanted to write history, and there was only so much ink to go around. She says, like, I'm not giving up, I'm not rolling over for your boss. He says, you should. She may have more firebenders than the three you know about. The woman's good at keeping secrets. Yangchen says probably a bit too quickly, you're bluffing. You don't really have a plan to get out of here. So that's an interesting one where, like, even the way kind of Kalyan worded that, like, she may, I don't even know for sure if there are other combustion benders. Like, it seems like the plot here is based around Thapa, like one combustion bender, but we still have the idea that, like, we really haven't done the research into what's going on yet. That's going to happen in a few chapters. But is there just one, or are there others? And that will be an interesting one to talk about. But he's like, before you attack me, I do actually have a plan to kind of get out of here. And that is, why don't you look out the window? Like, just down there, 2 blocks down, right side, the benches by the sweet wine vendor. And so she looks out and is just like, okay, what am I looking for here? Nothing going on here. And suddenly she sees what Kalyan was pointing out, and he's like, isn't it annoying when an amateur tries to play the intelligence game? He probably fancies himself the hero of a play, the royal in disguise who walks unseen among his citizens, must really get his juices flowing. And it's, of course, Feishan, Earth King Feishan, in disguise, like he does when he meets up with Yangchen. So it's revealed that he has come to the convocation in Taku early to sort of scope out the competition, and here's a bunch of, like, better players of the game in some ways, kind of criticizing, like, what on earth does he think he's doing here? Like, he thinks he's so in control, but other people have him completely in this wild, vulnerable position that he thinks he's like this, like, agent out on the streets, but he's completely at risk here. And Kalyan is like, I've got a man posted on Feishan right now, and it's Tail, or whatever way you want to pronounce his name. A guy who has, like, no problem just kind of knifing people at any time. So this is a pretty bad situation here of, like, basically, do you want to see the Earth King die just randomly in the streets of Taku? It says here, like, if Feishan disappeared anonymously into the gutters of Taku, a hole would burn through the map, starting in Ba Sing Se. So, yeah, this would start some sort of a major kind of conflict. Stuff would happen in response to this, and it wouldn't be good, basically. So, that is the situation here. He does also note that, also, I know you have other safe houses, and I know the rest of your team are probably in them, and I could go get them and deal with them if I needed to, but I won't. And what he wants in return for this is, I want you to stop messing with my brother's head. So again, this other interesting idea of, like, he's doing this to protect his brother, and he really seems like he cares about him, but he just doesn't treat Kavik very well, and it's such a interesting dynamic. And again, you'll note that, like, Kavik is not talking during, like, this whole thing. He's in the room, he's listening to this, he's right there, but he's not saying a single word. And that, I think, is really important in terms of the dynamic. Like, he just feels he can't speak around him here. Whereas Kavik was confident enough in like the previous scene to speak up to the other Zongdus, including Chai Si, but his brother kind of has this kind of control over him in a way. So that's definitely interesting. Kalyan explains his point. What you're doing to him is no better than blackmail. You're holding a knife to his conscience, and I don't appreciate it when people threaten my family in any shape or form. And this is an interesting one, but because Yangchen has sort of taken the approach with Kavik, and she did this from quite early on in the previous book of, like, I don't, in a way, trust myself to trust you. So I assume you are almost lying or holding back something from me every time we speak. She's never properly considered since they've reunited that, wait, might he actually be doing a lot of this because he wants forgiveness? Like, is that actually something he really, really wants? Is he doing this out of guilt for what happened in the previous book, the betrayal? And is she kind of taking advantage of that, like extorting him effectively over that? And it makes her sort of reflect on like their entire dynamic in a way that, yeah, she kind of forced his hand since the very start of the first book in a certain way. It kind of worked out for both of them, but the relationship has always maybe leaned a little bit towards being a little bit more business-like than otherwise. So you can see the doubts kind of coming into play here overall, that like this hits Yangchen, what Kalyan is saying. I protected Kavik in every way that you didn't. I got him far away from Chai Si, out of danger, like an older brother should, only for you to drag him straight back into the jaws of the beast. You're a hypocrite, Avatar. If you were worth anything, then your companions would follow you by choice, not because they owe you. And she can't really respond to this. And it's an interesting one because, like, it is sort of it's kind of the truth. But we know that like Taigum and say Akudan, they do owe her, but they also do it because they care as well. Jujinta again respects Yangchen so much, but he also like acknowledges that like being kind of part of her team is like the most amazing kind of experiences of his life, effectively. So, but she kind of is aware that, wait, are they only on my team because they kind of owe me one for what I've done for them? And it's beginning to have an impact here, in the same way that elements of what Iwashi said in the previous chapter are also having an impact. So this is very much the kind of like Yangchen getting some of her kind of approach really kind of smashed into the ground a little bit here, and like full on like doubt kind of creeping in about a lot of things. So at this point, Kalyan finally, I suppose, acknowledges Kavik is actually in the room, like puts his arm around his shoulder, and and it gives kind of Yangchen like the first look at like the two brothers like side by side. And it's noted here, you know, while both were handsome, Kavik's squarer jaw lent earnestness to his face, a tempering softness. Kalyan was all knives. Grip the wrong end and you got what you deserved. So that's one difference between the two of them, of course. And he's like, this fellow here is the real reason I sought an audience with you tonight. If you have any decency whatsoever, you'll stop using him as a piece in your game. And he's just like, that's all I really wanted to say. Wait until I pass by Feishan on the street outside, and then I'll make my move. And then you can finally move. If you do anything before that, I'll tell Tail to deal with the Earth King, basically. I even feigns, like, you know what Tail is like, you know, and he feigns like a kind of stabbing motion, punching into the stomach. And Yangchen's just like, oh, was he going to injure him right here? But no. Kavik doesn't even move. And it's a really interesting one because it's like, Kavik didn't even flinch. His lack of a response could only have been the product of conditioning. Years of childhood games with familiar, uneven rules. I get to do what I want. For you to attempt the same means you lose. So that's kind of representative of this. And this is one of those dynamics where even from the first book, I was kind of like, wait, is the interpretation that like this was always this like really skewed kind of somewhat bad dynamic between these two, that just Kavik wants to try and find what's going on with Kalyan, but their relationship was like ultimately good? Or this is very much presenting it as like Kalyan has always had a bit of a hold over Kavik for a very long time, even before the whole errand running thing. It's an interesting one to think about, but it seems like based on like that sentence just there, it's just that like even if it was maybe a little bit more just, you know, older brother, younger brother, nothing too serious, it eventually evolved into kind of what it is now, which is him using this kind of like status kind of gap between the two of them to kind of control Kavik like this. So yeah, he just strolls out of the room, strolls out right past the Earth King, and Yangchen is immediately like, okay, we can move now. Let's get a head start. He's got a head start. We can go after him. But Kavik is like, it's no use. He's gone. We'll never find him, not unless he wants to. Yangchen's like, I have my staff now. We can definitely do it. Let's see. Well, I have my staff now. I can follow him from the air. You fell for it. But he won't. He won't fall for it. Like he knows how like agile you are. He won't let himself be caught by you. How many times do I have to say it? He is better than me. He has always been better than me. He always will be. And he punches the wall 3 times. And it is described that he full force punches the wall so much that he like basically breaks his hand here. And this is what stops the pursuit. Yangchen has to basically airbend Kavik over to stop him punching the wall and like permanently injuring himself. And she immediately starts healing his hand. And she notes that this is the contrast here. Like he was doing such amazingly dexterous kind of waterbending moves the previous a few hours ago almost. And now here is his hands on the verge of like, he might not ever be able to do that again if I hadn't stopped him. But of course, Yangchen's a great healer. His hands are going to be okay. But Kalyan is gone now. They're not going to be able to catch up with him. And she's thinking to herself that like, wait, has he done this to basically kind of almost protect his brother, let his brother get away? He's kind of thinking to himself like, this is the effect that family can have on people. Not long before, she'd risked an entire city's well-being for the chance to reclaim a small bit of her connection to Jetson. There was no weakness as great as family. So that's the kind of point that's being made here, that even though Kavik, you almost are waiting for him to realize that like you are putting too much kind of on your brother. Like you have so much potential if you were to join one of these things. Like you would be an amazing White Lotus member. You would be an amazing Avatar companion. But this hold your brother has over you is kind of causing some problems here. And that's what we really see at the end of the chapter. That's where the chapter ends. Just that note of kind of like the two of them on the floor, Kavik's like injured on the mend hand, Yangchen having just healed him, just noting like, what is this dynamic here? And it's important to get this as well, because of course, I think I noted this when it came to like the ending of the first book, is that like Yangchen kind of just was like, oh, you betrayed me, it doesn't matter what the situation was. Whereas now she has seen very, very directly what the dynamic between the brothers actually is. She can herself in a way better kind of calculate and figure out like, oh, I kind of understand what the dynamic is a bit more now and kind of why you did what you did. Because that's kind of what's so good about some of these recent chapters, is that it's not just all about Kavik is the betrayer and it's all about him. I like that they have kind of focused a little bit more on Yangchen in this, of like, in a way, she's been thinking, has she been too harsh on Kavik with how she handled the end of the first book? How should she handle things going forward? And that, there are reasons kind of behind why what happened. And there's nuance to the situation beyond just, he betrayed me, that's all that there is to it. And even just the fact that almost for the first time she's thinking like, wait, is he here volunteering as part of this purely out of this sense of guilt and kind of trying to make amends for the betrayal in the first book? And as we'll kind of see, that is kind of the truth of the situation here. But there's some growth, there's some decisions that Kavik kind of needs to make going forward. But, it's the first major Kalyan scene of the book. We obviously just missed him at the big kind of Hunsha assassination. But that's the way they're kind of presenting the character, where we only get like occasional scenes with him. But in a way, the weakness, as great as family, kind of works both ways. We kind of see, like, in a way, Kalyan, he was so confident with everything that happened, but he kind of presented his own weakness to everyone there, of like, family is important to me. So that's a kind of interesting one right now. And it almost speaks to the idea of, if Kavik wasn't so kind of didn't just retreat kind of into himself whenever his brother was around, there might be a chance to turn the tables on Kalyan, but we're not quite there yet. So I think, again, just the characterization stuff is very strong here. And I think, you know, in a way, some of the reviews I've seen of this book have almost like specifically not talked about what actually most of the book is about, and that is the characterization between Yangchen and Kavik and their dynamic over the course of the book. Whereas I think I've made an effort in my videos to highlight that this is the strength of the book, like more so than I think a lot of the plot elements or some of the details, world building. It's these two characters being presented really, really strong, both in terms of their own arc, but also their arc kind of together. That's what really makes this book stand out. And especially the Yangchen books versus the Kyoshi books, that we don't just have sort of one main character here with Kyoshi, and then, you know, Rangi plays kind of like main supporting character, but she never quite gets as much attention as maybe you'd perhaps want. In these books, Kavik is getting enough attention by himself to the point where he stands out on his own in specific scenes, just as much as Yangchen does. And it makes the whole idea of Avatar companionship throughout these books really strong, because we're seeing one explored really, really well. So they're my thoughts on this chapter. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.